All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Well, welcome everyone to our first hybrid LitLive online and in person. My name is Ben Robinson. I'm going to be co-hosting tonight with Chris Pennell. We would like to thank everyone in our online as well as in-person audiences for coming and joining us tonight. LitLive is a free event at the moment, and we will do our best to move forward with that. LitLive is also funded by the Ontario Arts Council and the Canada Council for the Arts, and for their support, we are extremely grateful. As you can see, we have a new partnership. We are in a new space. We weren't here before we were online. My script has gone dead on me here. Anyways, I know where I am. I'm in the AGH, and we're going to bring up Tor Lukasic Boss to tell you a little bit about this partnership and what it makes available for all of us to be in this space. So Tor, if you want to come up and tell the people.
Tell the people.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tor Lukasic Boss. I'm the Director of Programs and Education here at the Art Gallery of Hamilton. And yeah, what a thrill it is to inaugurate this partnership with LitLive. I'm correct, you guys have been chugging along for 30 years, close to, and been a staple. You've had many venues in the downtown core, but held true to your commitment to area writers and the writers across Canada. It's not maybe everyone's first conclusion that the Art Gallery of Hamilton should be concerned about literary matters, but one of the thrills of my job over the last 6 years has been trying to work with the amazing team here on this discussion to kind of really ask ourselves what a gallery is and what its obligations are to the community. And one of the first things that came out is that we have great space here at the gallery, and it's not space that should just be sort of exclusively shared with visual arts and just visual arts culture, that it can do so much more in other creative disciplines. And because this city, being what it is, such a hotbed for creative activity, an amazing venue for music, for theater, for literary, for craft, we are really trying to kind of expand ways in which that we can get behind and support culture in all its form, particularly culture made here in this region, because this city, the wider city, is so really unique. So when Gary and Chris reached out to me and said LitLive was looking for a home, we immediately jumped. We thought it was a great fit, and we're going to. The hope is to bring LitLive in. We made the decision to park it on AGH Thursdays, which is a relatively new initiative that we're doing here at the gallery, where we're waiving our admission fees, and we're trying to really extend welcome out to the community to come in here, take a look at what we do. Get to know the people that are in our community, the people that we're working with, and hopefully take some of the, any apprehension from visiting the amazing shows that we have. I won't chew up too much of my time, but we are freshly launched with 3 amazing exhibitions right now. Margaret Watkins is a Hamilton-born photographer that not a lot of people know about. Her life's collection of photography was literally put in a crate at her own decision. She moved to Glasgow after a very productive stint in New York City as a working photographer, both a commercial photographer and a fine art photographer. She was very quick to bring a lot of modernist, cutting-edge sensibility to photography, just as the whole genre of photography was opening up. And yet, we really only have started to talk about Margaret Watkins in the last 2 decades. Part of that is thanks to academic work by Mary O'Connor, who's a professor emeritus at McMaster University, who's really championed Margaret's life. So we're really pleased to have this exhibition. It's the only stop for it in North America. It's been running gangbusters in Europe. So we're really thrilled to have it. We also have an exhibition by Ingrid Mehrhofer, who's a really spectacular artist, really wrapped up in this community. So she's done a really amazing visual reflection on some of the issues around the LRT and our city's infrastructure. So it's a really clever use of photography and digital collage in order to kind of unearth some of the complexity of a very real and ongoing matter for our city, which is the bringing in of the LRT. And then finally, we have Toronto-based artist Michelle Pearson-Clark, who has an amazing contemporary installation that confronts queer female masculinity, but it does so through Michelle's own lifelong reticence to sing and to sing publicly. And so she's confronted that fear, built an amazing 4-channel video along with 3 other participants. And it's a really striking, very affecting meditation on queer politics, on just how identity is formed and how fragile identity is when it comes to things like public performance. So yeah, there'll be a break. It's a great time to sort of skitter off and see the exhibition, or please come back. We'd like to be free as much as we can. We are free every Thursday. We are also going to be free this entire weekend, just to celebrate the launch of these exhibitions. So I would appreciate it if you spread the word, and please come back. And that's enough art. Back to LitLive.
Thanks, Tor. We were here a bit early to set up, and we got the chance to just go poke around too. So if you are gonna come on another Thursday night, come a little bit early and go see the exhibitions before you come join us here at LitLive. Along with tonight, we're introducing a lot of new things, bringing back some old things. We have our book table behind us. So if there's anything that you'd like to pick up tonight, that's the place to do it. And we are going to try to do our best to be attendant to the people who are here with us, but also the people who are on Zoom. So for those of you who are on Zoom, if you need anything, Gary is in the chat and he should be able to give you a hand with those things. I'd like to begin this evening with a territorial acknowledgement, acknowledging that the LitLive reading series operates in Hamilton, Ontario, and our events are part of the civic and cultural life of a city built on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and the Haudenosaunee nations, and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. In this particular moment, I would like to acknowledge the struggle of the Haudenosaunee people at 1492 Landback Lane to assert their treaty rights in the midst of settler and police encroachment, and send solidarity to the land defenders who have now been at 1492 Landback Lane for 594 days and nights. Thinking about them tonight, when it's as cold as it is, when it's a cold alert. Tonight, we are going to have the members of the LitLive Reading Committee reading to you. What is a literary event without a little bit of nepotism? But really, we're going to be the guinea pigs. We didn't want to subject, any of our guests to our first run at a hybrid event, and we have lots of great writers on the committee, myself notwithstanding. So we will get to hear from those people. With our first set, we are going to have Elizabeth Tessier, Chris Pennell, Jennifer Tan, and Gary Barwin. We'll take a brief intermission. You can go and poke around in the galleries or try to remember how to socialize in a room like this. And then after that, we're going to finish off the evening with Christine Michion, Susan Evans-Shaw, and myself, Ben Robinson. We will get things going with our first reader, Elizabeth Tessier. Elizabeth Tessier is a Hamilton poet. Her work has been published in Evenings on Paisley Avenue, 7 Hamilton Poets, In addition, she self-published a collection of poems entitled The Words They Cannot Say, inspired by 30 years of working in Hamilton museums. Her most recent work details her struggle with Parkinson's disease. It is a chapbook entitled Frozen Charlotte, published by Frog Tree Hollow Press as part of their disability series. Her work about Whitehern was recently included in the latest issue of Hamilton Arts and Letters. Please welcome to LitLive, Elizabeth Tessier.
Might need a little adjustment. Thanks. Yeah, that seems good. My new haircut is courtesy of my surgeon. I just had a DBS system implanted, which is kind of like a pacemaker for your brain. So I have a gorgeous new haircut to go with it. Parkinson's. My strings pulled tight by a jaunty hand, a hiccup in my shoulder, just enough to keep my mind bound from finding focus, photobomb, so words can't gather shelter with their friends, thumb burp, and shade but shadow, like strokes of paint ungainly, but only signify one dimension, hip blink, reality interrupted, as flat as shoe tap, that I avoided all these float years now, my body pulls me in. My mind used to flock like Socrates' hemlock talk, soul pulled free of the body, but now, new-rooted, it controls my thoughts. Neck wink, jerks unwieldy, plaster-faced doll, pulls my arm up behind my back. Please, like an arrest, stop, my own marionette. This poem begins with a preface taken from the Odyssey, and the poem itself is called Diagnosis. O shining Odysseus, never try to console me for dying. I would rather follow the plow as thrall to another man, one with no land allotted him and not much to live on, than be a king over all the perished dead. It's a nice little quotation that reminds us that the Greeks didn't think being dead was so great, even if you made it to the afterlife. Being alive was superior. Diagnosis. You don't even have to be dead, Achilles, to envy the man at the plow in another man's field. The diagnosis makes me envy any smooth walk, any full smile. The words in my head before bed are gone. Not even a pool of blood would coax these shadows back to me. Some great black ship in my head the gods have turned to stone, sending a buzzing tremor down my arm to my fingertips, making me lame. But what other journeys are stayed by its great black hull? Those inner journeys always most precious. Even you, Odysseus, know how the mind can take you on a wild rolling sea. You who travel the navel of the goddess with your finger until she pulls your broad back over her to ride up and down the axis mundi. But what if the great islands of your mind then slipped into the whirlpool of Poseidon's anger, pulling your inner water like marionette strings? Who goes home after such a shipwreck? My cave treasure is never unpacked. What voyage do I send my beloved on with my diminishing return? The next poem, also from the Parkinson's poem group, is called A Firm Persuasion, which is taken from William Blake. This begins with a bit of Blake. I saw no God, nor heard any in a finite organical perception, but my senses discovered the infinite in everything. And as I was then persuaded and remained confirmed that the voice of honest indignation is the voice of God, I cared not for consequences, but wrote. My grandmother lay dead on the bed. My mother took my hand so I could say goodbye to the woman I never really knew. I saw her always cramped and shaking with disease. She was slow words and spittle from a wide-eyed mask, her head carefully held in her chair with a fur cushioned tie her sister had rigged. Her perforated leather shoes with the bows and slim ankle straps from the 30s, when she could wear shoes in, danced toe down in the air above her stool. I had never seen her still. But here she was in the hospital bed, her skin-wrapped bones at rest, until I saw the smooth movement of her spirit pull itself free and rise, clapping its hands with joy. I knew what to look for, as William Blake and I had begun our walks together, and he had shown me a sketch of his brother Robert rising up out of his disease-ravaged husk. William and I wandered the caverns of hell together to talk about Nietzsche in the solemn stacks of Mill's library. And at the Tate, he held the door for me as we entered the room where his works, unstable, fade too quickly, as I will now as I take on my grandmother's disease like a china pattern. He chuckled, said he should have stuck to engraving. I didn't need the book then, or the dark room, for I had taken his words in my all too human breast. Each time we meet, we are closer in age. My silent grandmother outlived him. As they walk off together, I can see her lean her head towards him and laugh like she did in her wedding photos. This is a poem from my self-published poems about Dundurn. It begins with a newspaper account of McNabb's son's death. He doesn't always get a mention on tours. If you've been on tour at Dundurn and don't remember that he had a son, that's because he died before the 1855 restoration date. So it gets a little complicated to add him in, so you may not have heard of him. This is written from the point of view of his sister Anne Jane. Robert died Friday, April 25th, 1834. Western Mercury had this article, a lamentable incident. On Friday the 25th, Robert Allen McNabb, only son of A.N. McNabb of this town, a most amiable and promising youth of about 13 years of age, proceeded to the woods, accompanied by another youth about 16, unknown to their parents, in pursuit of game. They had been out but a short time when R.A. McNabb's gun went off accidentally while he was crossing over a log over a stream near the foot of the mountain. Unfortunately, the shot penetrated directly under his arm and came out at his breast near his neck, cutting away the arteries in the passage. The youth accompanying him, being at some distance when he heard the shot, repaired to the place and found him in the last agonies of death. A jury held before the coroner, David Beasley, Esquire, verdict, accidental death. The poem is called Robert Could Hunt. Robert could hunt. That April day, father was away. Hot spring sun set ice to stream. The thaw-filled ditches. I was stuck with a needle at home, while Robert ran shouting, no petticoats to muddy, free with a man's freedom, though only 14. I hated his dancing walk, Papa's posture. I turned away. Midday, the shouts, boys like hounds bayed, echoed in the leafless trees in locked bay. The door opened to a gust of grief, shattered the day like ice crust on water, punctured by nervous hooves. He had tried to jump the ditch, gun as crutch, butt end to mud, muzzle nuzzled under his arm. The shot tossed him in the stream he meant to cross. The boys hauled him home, dead before the door, though the doctor came and went, and letters were sent. I turn away from warm spring days, set my sons to books. My husband hunts in the fall, cautious, and doesn't press me to let them join him. They snigger their mother's trigger fear, but suffer it. Robert's shadow crossing their lives, halting and falling in. And I thought I would finish with Odysseus again. This one is published in Evenings on Paisley Avenue, 7 Hamilton Poets. Homecoming. Penelope is in your bed, her hair a mess. Her long finger traces the figure of your new tattoo, an anchor splashing through waves, finding ground. The trees have grown, the bed leans, no longer an outstretched plain, but a valley. The top of her foot slides under your great arch like Hermes' sandal. You have never been so close to anyone. You have passed the test, not mere return, but a suitable suitor, your broad bow bent to her task, and that was the easy part. How did you tell your story? Did you begin with the Ciconians, an equal measure of loot and wives interrupted by their allies? Or did you skip to the Cyclops, leaving out the milk and cheese and going for the gore of spattered brains? Crafty Odysseus, needing most to be known. Did you share or not share about the beautiful hair? You mounted the silver throne, you alone, the wine, the goddesses and leopard prince like a Versace ad. You had it all, except home. And home, not your mother in the shadows, or your father asleep in the orchard, or even this blood-washed palace, but this, like-mindedness. Your mother said to tell your wife that the body and the soul separate after death. She meant, this is the only time our souls can confer body to body. Only now can our urgent hearts take hold of each other's big thighs and come home.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Liz. Our next reader this evening is Chris Pennell. Chris Pennell has published 6 books of poetry. His collection, A Nervous City, released in 2013, won the Carey Schooley Book Award the following year. His last book of poetry, Love Despite the Ache, from 2016, won Poetry Book of the Year from the Hamilton Arts Council. He is a former treasurer and board member for the Grit-Lit Writers Festival and a former darts bus driver. He has hosted and helped run the LitLive reading series in Hamilton for 20 years. His 3 most recent collections of poetry are available from Woolsack and Wynn Publishing, and I believe on the book table tonight. And he has a new book of poetry. This was news to me as well. This is exciting. Adventurize Your Summer, forthcoming in the spring of 2023. Please welcome Chris Pennell.
Great, thank you very much, Ben. And thank you everyone for turning out tonight. We haven't done this for a few years. I personally haven't done this for a few years, so there'll be a few rough spots, but let's have some fun. Yeah, I'll just get rolling here. The first poem is called Cedar. It begins with a quotation, probably a famous quotation from John Keats. In his final letter to Charles Brown, he ended, "I always made an awkward bow." A forest seems a pleasant place to fall among cedar and spruce, some browning branches and yellowing leaves of grass. If you knew the deceased, you'd be more inclined to feel what a cedar coffin bluntly teaches. Otherwise, a funeral home pretends a grief it doesn't know to keep up appearances as if the mourners are imposters, as if we were all just curtains and flowers. Take your cue from the calm deportment of the staff. On the air, church bells summon us. Be still. We promise to remember the war dead, yet only photography is forever. The few faces my father showed me of family, of handsome boys and girls in uniform, are no more. Relations and yet unknown. My father, who knew them, is gone. The letters he wrote and my mother's were sent away. Here are the multitude they received, blue aerograms from the post office of sadness, mundane news from another time. The letters of young recruits say they'll be home soon. Optimists, like rookie journalists, vulnerable to newsprint and its failure to endure the sun and the air and time. No one able to step into the same war twice. Many exit with no bow at all. Of course, 2 years of relative isolation has made us all perhaps have time to consider our past. And what I discovered was I had a lot of unpublished poetry, and some of it, this one is a good example of how you can write a poem and it can sit there for a while and then events will overtake it. So you have to remember a day when Hamilton didn't have a Red Hill Expressway. This is called Red Hill Sumacs. Rain hits the sumacs along the Red Hill Creek far into the valley, settles to earth into the slow stream. There's no galvanized culvert yet, but the road will be built so the friends of City Hall may have their expressway, jobs, and money. In the sunny afternoon, mud smears make clear the path construction trailers will follow, not far from the hiker's path. The raccoon sleeps away the day in a tree. The eagle circles high, looks for mice, random life. Soon we will have standards, lanes, rules of the road, noise and light at night, everything done for a purpose of getting somewhere else, of being gone from here. The creatures are here. They have no desire to leave while the sumacs bleed in the autumn sun and asphalt is an abstraction still to come. At the top of the food chain stands a high school student who works Sundays at the burger bar, a destination so transitory it might as well be a dream. But if she should ever pause in her order taking, let it be because the pheasant and the wolf have wandered in and are about to fly out between the buildings on either side with whatever part of the human place setting strikes their fancy and can be shared with their young. As Ben mentioned, I spent some part of my career as a darts driver. And of course, the dart system goes on. I've retired. The dart system goes on. These poems, I suppose, have that as their as something dragging them forward. Anyway, this is called On Concession 8 West at Dusk. And I should mention this poem and the next are written from that driver's perspective. On Concession 8 West at dusk, the clouds over fields make fans and a vortex. A purple sky turns slow black. We are 98% water moving at 60 kilometers per hour in a bus susceptible to the heavier winds and potholes. One day we'll rejoin the water cycle as if we were only ever participants in a storm after a life of holding up in this other form. James is weak with a headache, unable to muster the volume of voice to be irritable. His wheelchair gleams blue and chrome like a naval officer's jacket, but he's haggard. A former trucker, he talks less on the way home from dialysis than I have ever known, too weak even for backseat driving. Goddess, when you take to the sky tonight, take what remains of James in your arms. For the trainee bus driver, let's begin with the song of the fire extinguisher. Please release me, let me go. I'm so cold in this red can, so compressed while the world burns for me. I could be much more than foam. And here come the safety triangles, escapees from the orchestra's pay attention section. A ding ding, ding-a-ling, larger than you'd expect when they are strung out along Highway 8, diverting traffic. Merge left, you fools. And consider the whole bus now, a giant doodad of belts and wheels, fluids, pistons, fenders, and heat. Toss those people and things in the back and let's get going, on schedule. A 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Except when you break down, your schedule blown, for example, by a tire. The working day will be a waltz or a foot race or a walk in the park. You'll learn to follow your nose, to sniff the map, heed dispatch and to swear and find passengers by street name and landmark, a string of stops across the city. Sometimes, but rarely, over the roar of the engine, you'll hear them speak to you. Though you've just begun, they've been trying to get your attention for years. This one is called Stars and Time. Time tears at us because we cannot see how we must be worn down piecemeal and prepared to rot. The most mysterious force in the universe, we barely remember. Unless, blessed with telescopes, we peer across the galaxy at shows of light that describe what stars there used to be. Boy Scout with astronomy badge on the upper sleeve of your green shirt. Once it was achieved, did you turn away from the nebulae of greatness, the night sky all open to your eye? Knowledge learned can be lost, and stability, like balance in the aged, depending on the inner ear and stability of foot and knee. Once we thought our form and happiness were attuned to a cosmic machinery, harmonic clocks, inaudible melody, music of the spheres. For now, as long as we orbit our loves, our feet in snug relationship with the ground, we can enjoy the ancient feeling of our earthen home. And one more from this manuscript collection. This is called A Day Trip to El Alamein, which was a battlefield in Egypt during the Second World War. The desert is full, small succulents, scorpions, Egyptian cobras, the horned viper. And in the Commonwealth Soldiers Cemetery, a garden of cacti thrives. Elsewhere, the war has not been tidied up. Burned men beside their half-buried machines, a Spitfire, a ration tin, spent shell casings, a uniform with its soldier blown out. A uniform with its soldier blown out. Here lies a sergeant of this war, known unto God. El Alamein is a battlefield that is all museum until the day those luxury beachside condos are finished. On our way back to Cairo, we slow for hundreds of sheep crossing and a Bedouin herder who allows us to take his picture, unconcerned with being paid. This long, pristine asphalt ribbon leads to the most crowded city in the world, the triumphal ancient Mizar. I feel a small purification at losing faith in our tour representative, who is now silent after deceiving us several times, and our driver whose eyes are rooted to the road, his gaze steely as his new tires. We do not have 40 days to spare for fasting or time to stop and purge behind the rear bumper. We have only a photo of a soldier's cross, while solitude, sun, and sand remake the world ecstatic and thin. I ignore repeated offers to stop for bottled water, allegedly imported from foreign places like Canada. I will draw on my internal fats and minerals until I shed my bitterness like a snake's skin against that rock. And I'll end with a couple of poems from Drive. Night slides into the city as soft as the veil his mother would adjust around her bouffant hair before church. He drives his huge bus gently up a cut in the escarpment's side, his good hand on the wheel, the other cradled in his lap. He wears a shirt of blues, savors the squeaks and echoes of the empty bus, and nothing but inky indigo ahead. Pink clouds in the west. Above the lake, from Concession Street, the city begins to perforate with electric light. Then he remembers. He is responsible. Tonight at those stops, everyone waited patiently to descend into those lights, to connect with some love, some purpose before a fault, either in the city's power grid or in themselves, winks them out. Near midnight, he tells his dispatcher that he's clear of passengers, of obligation. He means he's clear of everything except a city spread beneath his eye like an enormous tray of diamonds. Actually, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
It was lovely. Thank you, Chris. Our next reader this evening is Jennifer Tan. Jennifer Tan has won the Short Works Prize for Poetry in 2016 and 2020, and was longlisted for the Vallum Award for Poetry in 2020 as well. She has been published in the poetry anthologies of Tamarack, Canadian Poetry for the 21st Century, and The Beauty of Being Elsewhere, Poems of Journey and Sojourn, as well as on the website of The Wild Word. Her haikus have found their way to the Asahi Haikuist Network, and she is a regular contributing poet and member of the Tower Poetry Society. Please welcome to LitLive, Jennifer Tan.
Thank you, Ben. And this is a nice surprise to see everyone here. Thank you. I hope I'm not getting too loud now that I. Okay, so I'd like to read the first poem from the Berlin-based website, The Wild Word. It's called Escape from the Blue Garden. They had a theme for the month of October 2021 on theme of escape. So, escape from the blue garden, like small flowers all over a slope, they spread in serves of forget-me-nots, bruises. The blue garden once served as fertile ground. Now it conceals cries wanting to be unburied from its depths. Weeds scrape through reedy holes, rusty-edged fences for an escape from a chain-linked prison. They feed on sunlight, greedy dragonflies whisk away. So from the color blue, I'd like to read a poem with the title Yellow, which is a complement of blue in the color circle. Yeah. So I was telling Janice, the photographer, about summer and winter, and that I had a poem about the heat of summer, and I don't like summer. Yeah, this was because I remember a day when the ground in my garden, the soil is all dry and there are cracks, like, you know, little earthquakes. Yeah. So yellow, a scent of pineapple rests on my ripening skin, asada and sweet as meat. In the quarantine hours of my self-imposed siesta, my thoughts perspire so as to disperse into the garden where every green blade is yellow now that clay has dried her eyes and cracked the mask on her face, leaving lines like lightning paths to take me farther away, as if I could again be drenched in the best Cuban pina colada I tasted that yellow day with Alvaro, just as warm, in Vinales in Pinar del Rio, where the Mural de la Prehistoria on that large mountain face is left hanging permanently. I hope instead that sunflowers here will burst out blooming when this August sky sends rain running down on earth like this reeling of a tropical fiesta of rum, coconut milk, and pineapple juice. But right now, the blades whirl above me to fan the world around that timeless spun gold fire. So because these two poems have mentions of garden, the next poem is how to create a garden. Or you can retitle it, how to create a poem about garden, something like that. But for now, it is how to create a garden. Hope comes as the great white bird to hatch its chicks in plumage with hues spilled boldly from flowers with petals for brushes. Wonder finds pleasure imbued through the structure and balance. Undulations flow along entwined spaces and patterns. Love hums in a rainbow, musical scales and notes, blue, lilac, pink, turquoise, coral, ochre, copper to form an orchestra. Magic nurtures nature with designs of fish bones, sea cucumbers, anemones, lobster claws, flawless on grounds of oceanic rhythm, even as a spider spins a web of tales. So as you may have guessed that I like flowers and pretty things, pretty people, and art. So years ago, maybe 8 or more years ago, right here at AGH, they had an exhibition of Paul Cézanne's paintings. It's called, the exhibition was called The World is an Apple. Yep. So this is my poem about his paintings, not about Cézanne, because he's not really pretty, but he's very hard to get along with, but he's dedicated and persistent, works very hard. So this is just a tribute to his art. From apples and skulls. The world spins when apples separate from branches to sit still and pose on a table made from trees. Skulls as round as apples with hollowed out empty sockets paired with shadowy nasal passages live on as cavernous craniums on the wall of the art gallery. From the palettes of tints and shades, from brush in Cézanne's hand, from such globular forms of life and death, our senses come around into fruition. The next poem is called Lace of Lights. It's inspired from a Facebook post of someone whose name starts with M. She decorated her windows with lights, little lights, and I thought it was very pretty. So this poem starts with something pretty, but then as poem goes, it leads you on to other places. Lace of lights. She threads December, lines of little light bulbs a white lace curtain in its brilliance, the window of a mind, is now a place things hang and fit in the distance. Snow-capped mountains shimmer in sunlight. A Christmas tree. I have two more poems. This one I'm excited about because it has been accepted for the anthology Poetry in Place, Poetry and the Environmental Hope in a Southern Ontario region. And some of the poets here have their works in there. This is a poetry and ecology project with Deborah Bowen from Redeemer College. And she has given me permission to read my poem before the publication of this anthology, which I'm anticipating to have it in my hand, because in it is not only the works of the poets I admire. They write about the land, water, trees, and animals, and etc. But also in it, there will be interviews that follow on how they relate to the environment and their motivation for writing poetry. So I will enjoy reading those, revelations. The Expectant Lake. I don't believe that dolphins dared to swim in canals in absence of gondolas, or that goats ventured into new grounds to look through the windows of a house. In the spring, the whole world huddled inside to escape from the viral spread. I went for a walk at the Bayfront Park, where the year before a stench came up out of the waters from phosphate-fed blue-green toxic algae blooms. Condominiums nearby held their noses, let summer sail past like others before. I stood on the edge, pinched my skin, opened my eyes to see if there were dolphins or humpback whales. Lake Ontario remained expectant as goats, hoping for something else instead of pollution or fantasy. And because you have subdued your groans from my reading, I have a poem authentically written for you. See, it's in cursive, so it's not in print yet, and maybe it'll never get in print, but I don't want you to miss it. This is just for you. A poem for you. I would like to bust a sneeze, a poem with squiggles and squeezes like a bee in pollen dust. You are waiting for sea breeze whispers, golden wisdom rising up as clouds from salty old waves, a sailboat, a rolled message inside a floating bottle. When I finish writing this poem, the sun will be tired. You will be thirsty to turn around for home. I would like to place this poem in a cup you can drink from. I will have mentioned flowers and honey you can almost taste. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We are going to have one more reader before we take a brief intermission this evening. And our last reader for this set will be Gary Barwin. Gary Barwin is a writer, musician, and multidisciplinary artist. His new novel, Nothing the Same, Everything Haunted, The Ballad of Motel the Cowboy, won the Canadian Jewish Literary Award for fiction, and his selected poems, For It Is a Pleasure and a Surprise to Breathe, edited by Alessandro Porco, didn't win anything. He sent me this. This is unedited. Though after reading the introduction, his mother said she finally understood his poems. His national best-selling novel, Yiddish for Pirates, won the Stephen Leacock Medal for Humor and the Canadian Jewish Literary Award, was a finalist for both the Governor General's Award and the Scotiabank Giller Prize, and was longlisted for Canada Reads. An inveterate collaborator, he has created work with many writers, musicians, and visual artists, including Bird Arsonist, an amazing title, written with Tom Prime, published just a few weeks ago. We're getting lots of fresh off the press work here tonight. He's lived in Hamilton, Ontario since 1990 with a vague but unrealizable longing for a time before gentrification. Gary Barwin.
Thanks, Ben. I was thinking that Auden said that poetry makes nothing happen, but poetry and literature made us all gather here and in Zoom world. So that is really something. It's such a great pleasure to be here. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, they were saying like dolphins were going to come back. You know, nature is returning, dolphins would be in. So like, this is nature returning. Like the art gallery is open and we're here. So that I think is really kind of marvelous. I'm so grateful that everyone is here, and I'm so grateful that we can do this. And also, and it's really nice that people can be here in Zoom as well. Yeah, especially at this time of like war and pestilence, I guess. Blue train. So many accordions on the roof of the blue train. What is history? The tracks travel to the horizon. Quick, let's travel faster than memory. Now a song. So many accordions on the roof of the blue train. What is history? The tracks travel to the horizon. Quick, let's travel faster than memory. Life is long. Life is long. Don't worry. Except for its sudden end. I mean it. Here we say something about love. Life is long. Footfalls, the war. But like I said, except for its end. Life is long. Don't worry. Don't. A sudden end means it was a rocket. A rocket. Like a footfall landing on the ground. Like maybe when you were running until the end. But of course, I miss you. I miss you. You're not here. Not here. And all I can do is walk. I'm going to read from, I have, as I was joking with Brent, I don't, it's during the pandemic, I haven't had a social life. I've been, my personal hygiene has been poor. And so all I can do is be in my pajamas and be unwashed and work on a new novel. So I'd just like to read you the beginning, just the beginning little bit of that novel. I was trying to decide to go into the underworld, and there's a part where my kids used to do this. They used to go when we went. I don't know why we went to IKEA so much, but anyway, when we were in IKEA, as one does as a family, I guess, they would run into where the cupboards were, and they try and get to Narnia by running through the IKEA closet. It's like, if you can get to Narnia through a closet, if that was true, it wouldn't be in an IKEA closet. So my characters get to the underworld through the as-is section through a closet in IKEA. But I'm reading just before that. This is the beginning. The stall in the Save-A-Bunch employee washroom, in addition to being a place of gastrointestinal confession, was a place of solitude and reflection. But knock, knock. Who's there? Death. Death? Who? It's a joke. I figured. You're coming with me to bring my son back from the dead. What? You're Danny Schneiderman. Danny Schneiderman, the comedian? I am. You're going to the underworld to bring back my son. He thought he'd been safe, undiscoverable. It had been a few years since a fan had tracked him down. He'd stopped performing comedy years before, but these earnest, rattled, melancholy men and they were always men, would find him, hoping he could do something for them, hoping that just meeting would help. Why? Because of a lonesome Freud thing deep inside their sorrow cave, as if he were a holy relic. The last part, at least, was true. He was as fresh as the knee bone of St. Christopher, the thumb of St. John, and a saggy reliquary of middle-aged flesh. These trackers would have seen his old routines a million times on YouTube. The bit where he described JFK's assassination from the bullet's point of view, the one where he used an electric chair to cook an actual brisket. Clip clop, clip clop, clip clop, bang. The joke about the Amish drive-by shooting. What could he do for them, even if he'd wanted to? He could barely do anything for himself. They were unstable as a stack of Jenga blocks, and he wasn't going near them, either to pull or to push, just so they could fall. It was enough to keep himself from Legoing into bits. And bringing this guy's son back to life, that was a near grandmaster level of need and derangement he'd not encountered before. Was it because the guy had found out about his brother Lenny's suicide, or his father's strange story? Was this why they thought he might have something to offer? Was more than just a famous ex-jokester with a weepy mug? But they'd no idea. If he'd ever had anything to offer beyond jokes, he was past that now. Danny, the gray-haired stock boy, he had nothing, not even jokes. He'd given it all up as it had given up on him. He whose laughs last probably is only alive in reruns, a laughingstock. See, even when he tried, he had nothing. Sorry, he said from inside the stall, you got the wrong guy. I'll wait. As if waiting would change anything. Danny had tried to wait out the grief, but it had returned, like winter or herpes. If he took much longer in the bathroom, his manager was going to call search and rescue. It'd be like rescuing a toddler from a well. Then again, he could use the help, if not the publicity. The flash of a blade between door and the stall where the guy stood. He was wrapped in a long, dark cape. Was he a recent graduate? What did he call it? That shade of black that reflects no light, that makes it seem like nothing's there? A BA? And he wore sophisticated socks, silk maybe, and shiny dress shoes. There was a luminous blacking of infinity in those shoes. And a gun. Danny, as per standard procedure, had his keister over the big O of the toilet, and so the smaller O of the gun barrel was aimed at his forehead. A perfect shot into the frontal cortex through some gray matter which might one day come in handy, and then out his nape. A cowboy hat shot front and back, a core sample of what used to be alive, now only a smear on the stall's back wall. He had him. Unless he could get help or get the gun, he was going to hell and back with this grief-mad despair ado. You're going to help me bring my son back. When someone is pointing a gun at you, every answer is, okay. From the underworld, okay. He felt strange, feverish, unsteady, like deja vu, except if you saw nothing. It was shock, surely. No one who isn't already dead is ready to have a gun pointed at them, at least not while they have their pants bunched down over their slip-ons. My doctor gave me 6 months to live, Death said, but I couldn't pay his bill, so he gave me 6 more months. What? It's a classic. All of mine are. So that is the beginning. I think, there's something really remarkable about being in a place with an actual book that you've written and published, because I've had 2 books come out during the pandemic, but I haven't been with them. Well, I mean, okay, I walked in the grocery store and tried, but people weren't really interested. But to actually, in an actual reading with an actual book, there's something really lovely about like having your book out in the world. So that's a nice thing. So this is a book called Bird Arsonist that I wrote actually online, starting from before the pandemic, though, with Tom Prime, who I've written another book with before. We generated all this material, and then we like edited it down till we ended up with these very little minimalist poems. So it was really an interesting process, and we did it live on a Google Doc. So we were connected by Zoom, and we had his Google Doc open. And so if I wrote something, by the time I got to the end of the sentence, Tom might have edited out what I said in the beginning. And so it was like really, like it was a kind of like a trust exercise because you just had we had to surrender to the control of the process, which was really interesting. I'm a better man for it. Cloud punched, bird arsonist, surgery smell and superglue spray of eyes. Null Island, dreamer of roses, hairy with rain guns. The biosphere is calling. Funds are going to survive space-time. Stag against eliminated text. I can no longer afford to want. The sky was delicious and vibrated. A body, no different than opening. Was I names? Braceleting outside. Babies. One day I'll speak. Blue-eyed flip phones, sawtoothed spine clip, spindle needle box, spatchcock. Equinox of the reaper. Bird arsonist, bilious nerve endings not without nymph fist. Having a bear in one's dream is to have a bicycle. Frankly, the is oversharing. It is correct to be frightened. Neither undertake, write, nor publish. Reapers will speak impressionably, the casing of their brains, a lighthouse. Propose to become the nervous pal of shoulders. I would not lose any of the milquetoast pasture of fleshy pebble. Blue inhale these waves. A word fitly spoken is what the sky looks like to a wheel broken near your sister's child. And let me add this, the excellent library of wings. I perceive boulders as small stones. Lullaby sparrow may rend the knot, fob fitters with weapons of dew. I shall stay by the windscreen jibe, bones defy whereupon they shrink. So I'm going to read just a little bit from my novel. It just came out in paperback, which I'm really thrilled about. It's nice to have a hard copy, but it's nice that it's paperback. Paperbacks are really nice, and they're easy to carry to the grocery store and show people who aren't expecting it. So, you know, there's always that. So I think I'll read, there's a passage where one of the things that happens is the Nazis are coming in, are invading, it's 1941, the Nazis are invading Lithuania. They're coming in, and the characters, my character, Mottel, who imagines he's a cowboy, it's kind of his way of dealing with the grief of everything. He's a bit like Don Quixote, and so he's having this fantasies of being a cowboy, and he needs a quest, and so his quest is 20 years before, when he was about 18, he was in the mountains in Switzerland in the glaciers, and accidentally he got his testicles shot off by Tristan Tzara, and the testicles were shot clean off, and they fell, and they landed in the glacier. Well, they fell, they rolled, and then they landed in the glacier where they froze. So his quest is to go to like in the middle of the war, is to find his testicles, and part of the reason for that is the idea, and because he wants to have a child, and his idea that in the middle of all this, in the midst of all this death, the idea that it could be worth bringing somebody to life, it could be worth living, it could be worth bringing in new life, is something that connects with him. So that's what he does. So I thought I'd read you the part where it's not giving it away, because there's two testicles. So I'm going to tell you when he finds one of them. So Mottel held his hands out. Guess which one? Esther looked thoughtfully at the back of each of his pale hands in turn, as if she could read what was within. After a minute of dramatic chin holding and deeply thoughtful face squinching, she announced, "This one," and tapped the knuckles of his left hand. Mottel smiled and turned his hand over, opening his fingers in ostentatious display, and dropped the testicle. They watched with dread as it toppled from the cliff, then buffeted from crag to crag. It didn't take Mottel and Esther's warmer route through the forests and meadows, but instead followed the colder route of the glacier. Rolling, it began to collect snow. Though it became more and more distant, its size remained the same, for it became larger as the snow collected around it. then larger still, until it was rolling over the snowy crags above the village. Take the snow of a mountainside and roll it like a carpet. Take this entire carpet, a vast crystalline cabbage roll, and compact each end. Turn it into a ball, a frozen somersaulting cherub, a scoop as large as a house. It was an icy comet hurtling toward the village, a torpedo released from Mottle's hand high above had attained near limitless mass, incalculable velocity, and became a snow angel of death. Its frosty scythe like an eyeball looking both everywhere and nowhere. The snow had mobbed around Mottle's single clacker. And it rolled. Fat man, little boy, Dame Fortuna, it rolled. And in its wake, the snow on the crags began to unsettle, to dislodge. By the time the immeasurable colossus of this murderous snowball, with Mottle's earnest and unaware single ghibli at its center, thumped blindly into the village, it was followed by an avalanche. His scudding Boychik body slammed the buildings, chimneys, gables, the roofs, windows, walls, stairs, its pension and small outbuildings, all crumpled, toppled over, destroyed. And then the torrent from the mountains buried the village, a mining disaster, a rock slide, a tsunami, a biblical flood. Mottle regarded the devastated, snow-engulfed village, and that's why we're born with two. Thanks very much.
Entirely bowled over. We're going to take a short break here. We'll do about 10 minutes. So maybe if you're going to go out, try to be back for 20 after 8, and we'll have a couple more readings. Thank you.
Yeah, it's so dead. And the onslaught is kind of like uses it as a real tool in the dispensing of physical tools that are just pull out my destiny from Have you ever read LitLive? Oh yeah, yeah, that book's awesome. It kind of blew my mind. But it's all about the cowboy back in his crap that he wrote. Yeah. Have you seen the film The Rock? It's about a rodeo rider who gets concerned with horse but he doesn't know how to go to compensation. It's but he has no work. So the interesting thing is she likes to work with that. He's working with an actor who's a film who has the brain, like and then cast as his family. It's jarring because it's just things that film narrative can't fake. This thing just has a veracity to it. The real is good that you're kind of and then what's kind of understood because he's like radio rider kind of lives it. Because the whole thing is like it's just inflating all these really in terms of like cinema experience, it's like I think it's essential. I suspect you like the right about yeah. I was lost it just a little bit. Just because. Yes, because then we got back to the game. Doesn't matter how good. Yeah, the rider is like I get around upstairs. Sure. Yeah.
Test 1, 2.
That's okay.
It's really just the case of pulling it over like that, I guess, so that they're. Yeah. But some people use them and some people.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but I'm not sure if it's like a hard.
We'll get going then. Thanks. Okay, welcome back. Second half. Tor, we have 9 o'clock is a hard deadline here. Oh, okay. All right. So that'll be our cue. Okay. We have 3 readers. This was a bonus evening in the sense that LitLive offered 7 readings. Normally we do 6. Anyway, it's a free event tonight. You know all this. Okay, I'll just give you one special announcement, and then we'll move on with the rest of our program. I just wanted to mention that I mean, LitLive has been around for a long time, and it's a place where the writing community really comes together, and I mean, I would guess that 99.5% of the people in this room are writers, and so I just wanted to make note of the passing of one of our friends, someone that I've known in the writing community since the 1990s. I'm speaking of Sean Selway, who would often come to LitLive. Um, and I'm just going to remind you of who he was and how important he was by quoting a very small section from the Hamilton Spectator obituary for Sean. One of Hamilton's writing community passed away on February the 7th. He died peacefully at home of cancer at age 73. Just like he dealt with all experiences in his life, Sean managed his illness with strength and grace. A true Hamiltonian, Sean received a degree from McMaster and trained as a millwright at Stelco. He wrote many stories and articles about Hamilton and advocated for the most vulnerable among us. His award-winning book, Nobody Here Will Harm You, featured a passionate study and account of the mass medical evacuation of Inuit tuberculosis patients from the Eastern Arctic to the Hamilton Sanatorium. Sean's relentless passion for improving housing conditions led him to assist with the Stony Creek Tower rent strike. On the issues facing Canada's Indigenous population, in Sean's own words, quote, "No, they won't be solved by me, and I hesitate to say we are at the whim of larger forces, but when we see what we think we can do, then we ought to do that and press and press and press so that things happen sooner. People only have one life, and time is crucial." Based on my knowledge of Sean, that is so typical of the man, and we will miss him. Okay, our next reader is Christine Missione. Christine is an Italian-Canadian fiction writer who lives in Hamilton. She won the Relit Award for short fiction in 2014 for her collection Auxiliary Skins. In 2014, Mansfield Press published her first novel titled Carafola. Christine has also won the Hamilton Arts Award for Best Emerging Writer in 2011 and the Exile Editions CVC Short Fiction Contest in 2012. She has also either placed or won contests organized by Prism International, ELQ, Prairie Fire, and the Antigonus Review. She's currently working on her second novel. Please, a warm welcome for Christine Missione.
All right, good evening. It's such a pleasure to be reading alongside my fellow LitLive committee members. Whoever came up with that idea, kudos to you. I'm going to be reading tonight from my novel. I've been working on this novel now for 5 years. I'm just going to see if I can move that up. For 5 years. The novel's finished, and I'm just in the late stages of revisions right now. All right. So this is the opening of my novel, the first few pages, and it introduces one of my two protagonists. This is how it feels after you take the life of someone you love. Even with the clouds billowing and ethereal and pinned across a blue sky, even with the sun, the bright yellow of children's books, even after 7,000 kilometers, 20 years, an ocean of whiskey, even when you swear to God you have finally forgotten, still every day you hear, just jump, just fucking end it. Catania is a palette of ancient beige and lava black set against a vaporless sky. It is the color and heat of a place not far from the equator, a place with every last vestige of nature paved out of it. From a distance, Mount Etna looms, the witch of Sicily. You can tell the season by looking at her summit, her icy cape in January, her dull charcoal in November. Today, she wears the arid slip of summer. Chris walks the street named for her that runs straight to her foothills and carves a third off her side. Beside him, Johnny, scraggly and unleashed, scavenges for food in the crevices between the cobbled lava stone. An espresso first, Chris thinks. So he walks through sweaty La Fiera market with the hagglers and the pickpockets, the pavement so hot in the swelter of summer it almost sizzles. On the edge of the crowd sits a tiny bar with a red awning and wrought iron patio furniture. They call him by name but never smile when they see him, serve him his macchiato without asking, slide it along the marble countertop, and put their brass dish out for money. He drinks, he pays. Today, he thinks about whether High Top Etna Tour allows dogs on their small group excursions. He wonders about liability insurance and if the tour company has it. And if they do, would it cover what he plans? After he finishes, he leads Johnny to the small alley behind the bar. Aspetta, boy, he says, telling him to wait. He rubs Johnny behind the ears, then kisses him on the head. Aspetta, I'll be back soon. Johnny is bilingual. He's a good dog, always waits, never judges. Across Corso Sicilia and into the San Barello quarter, the market sounds fade into nothing but Chris's breath, his chest rising and falling quickly. Beside him, an emaciated tuxedo cat rubs itself against the walls, thick pus caked around its eyes. Blinded, the cat follows the crumbling wall into a puddle of stale piss water and howls. It hasn't rained here for over a year. Every drop of water pooled in this city is stagnant and man-made. Farther ahead, cigarette butts piled densely in some areas like pigeon shit. Walls decay under corrugated plastic roofing, garbage bags curtaining the holes. The streets of San Barillo are narrow and dim, lined with rows of boarded up doors but no windows. Forensic architects study premeditation here, draw correlations between sexual desire and urban planning. Only one woman works the alley this afternoon, a lanky blonde he's never seen before, her shirt 2 magenta triangles with a fringe of tassels hanging over her torso. She spots him and winks. When he continues towards her, she rises sensually from her plastic chair, tassels swaying. The black trim of one of her fake eyelashes sags, and he notices pale stretch marks rippling across her stomach and chest where the shirt doesn't cover. She's probably somebody's mother, he thinks. She speaks to him in a hot Catanian slang he doesn't understand. He nods and stuffs his hands in his pockets. A few inches from his face, she runs her red polished pointer finger from his lips down his chin toward his chest and stops. Vieni, she says. His skin burns from the touch, but he follows her down the alley anyway, into a dingy room reeking of old sex and perfume. There's a pillowless double bed beside a sink and a pile of unopened condoms. It's all business here. Lui mi nome è mia dolce, she says with sexy affect. They all do this, give fake names. It's good customer service, something human for him to hold on to forget what he's about to do to her. He swallows hard. Mi chiamo Chris. He knows she doesn't care. She's already kneeling in the middle of the bed with her hands pulling at the sides of her triangles, breasts spilling out. She shakes them and bites her bottom lip like she loves it. Chris hesitates by the door. Ma che fai? She pouts. Vieni, vieni. In a wad of cash, he lays €500 on this edge of the sink, quadruple the going rate, then edges toward her. She smiles and bites her lip again, and he wants to ask her what she thinks of him. Him standing there, what does she see? She reaches her hand out, and his own trembles while she tugs him toward the bed. Her nipples are thick, dark, and briny, and he puts them in his mouth. This is not what he wants, but he licks them all over, then up her neck. He can't kiss her lips, the unspoken rule, so he runs his fingers through her hair and sucks on her neck. While he yanks her skirt down, he catches a glimpse of her face, bored, staring at the decorative plaster cupping the base of a decrepit chandelier. His cheeks burn hot. She probably counts the indentations, then counts them again and again until it's finished. He doesn't care though, or maybe he does, but knows if he cares too much, he couldn't go through with it. So he presses his eyes closed. He looks away. He knows she won't need to count the plaster too long. 20 years ago, when Chris told his mother he was leaving home, he thought she would sneer at him, take a mouthful of her expensive wine, even shoot the rest down her throat. He thought she'd wag her manicured finger. You don't have the balls to do it, baby. then laugh like he was pitiable, like his conviction was the stuff of boyhood. Instead, he watched as she dropped her glass, the crystal crashing across the porcelain tile as if in slow motion, her eyes and mouth falling too. He was freshly 17 and didn't understand that his timing was poor. He thought only of what he'd done and how his mother was partially responsible. Above the streets now, the sky is wrung of its blue. Mount Etna with her henchmen of foothills still watches from afar. They say that Typhus, the storm giant, is buried beneath her, that he breathes and she smokes, he turns and she quakes. She's destroyed Catania countless times over, every street a graveyard. Johnny waits for him by the dumpster, 50 pounds of unconditional love. Chris found him 12 years ago when he was only a puppy, left behind after the fish market had shut down for the day, when those streets behind Piazza del Duomo are sticky with fish guts and stale seawater. Johnny was curled beside a pile of styrofoam containers, his fur matted and blood coming from his eyes. It was December. Chris wrapped his leather jacket around him, then rushed to the nearest vet. Whenever he returns from the alleys of San Barello and sees Johnny's tail wag excitedly, whenever they lock eyes, Chris feels he's failed this small creature in his care, the only one in the world who still loves him. Then, returning to the bustle of La Fiera market, he's surprised how everything is the same as he left it. This is also how it feels after you take the life of someone you love. The shock of returning from a kind of hell into a world that still smiles. Here, it's the stalls of colorful fruit amid the monochrome that move him the most, the children picking ripe berries from the stands to eat. It's the innocence and how these children are loved, how they're taken up in the arms of their parents. They live as if the entire underbelly of the world doesn't exist. All right, so that's the opening of my novel, which introduces Chris, who's one of two protagonists. And then the other protagonist is June, and their stories are sort of interwoven throughout. And as I was preparing for this reading, I realized that I was painting a very grim portrait of Catania because it's been filtered through Chris's POV and his mood. And so I just want to footnote this by saying that Catania is actually quite a spectacular city. And my other protagonist, June, there's just more color to the city when it's filtered through her perspective. So there you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christine. That was Christine Missioni reading from new work. Seems to be a wonderful outcome. If I mean, there has to be some silver lining to all of this isolation that we've gone through. 2 years, my God, I can't stop thinking of it. But thank you, Christine. Looking forward to the publication of that novel. Next, we have Susan Shaw. Susan Evans Shaw has been a member of LitLive since the days of Carrie Schooley, and over the years has witnessed the growth and many changes in the series, most for the better. Thank you, Susan. Susan was also a founding member of Grit Lit, Hamilton's annual literary festival. She's the author of Heritage Treasures, The Historic Homes of Ancaster, Burlington, Dundas, East Flamborough, Hamilton, Stony Creek, and Waterdown, published by James Lorimer, and over there at the book table. And also she has authored Canadians at War, 2 guides to the battlefields of World I and II, which was published by Goose Lane Editions. As a writer, her interest lies in history, that is Canadian, European, and geological, and all things living. Her other pleasure is reading fiction and nonfiction and listening to CBC Radio. Please welcome Susan Evans Shaw.
Good to breathe.
Okay, this is a, a, a view of how, a brief view of our own city. After the snow, January 17th. The sweet light, that's what photographers called it. The liquid light just before sunset that makes the world sharp and soft at the same time. It's a quote from a recent novel called Tenderness by Alison McLeod. Twilight in January. The storm is over, and the last rays of the setting sun reflect off the glass of the tall building opposite. From my window, I look out over the city. The blizzard has left Hamilton blanketed in deep snow. Streetlights and lights of the tiny houses far below start to flicker on, each house gently outlined by the canopy of new fallen snow. The scene is worthy of a Hallmark card. The automated harbor beacon has not yet turned to red, a mystery I often ponder. Like the turning on of streetlights, can the beacon be triggered by to change color by the ambient light? There's no one to ask. Burlington Bay has not yet started to freeze over, but the last of the lake and ocean-going cargo vessels has departed. The shipping news column in the Hamilton Spectator will return come spring. Should the Arctic temperatures hold and the bay freeze, I look forward to watching ice boats race over the frozen surface. The bitter east wind has turned at last to the more benign west. My snow-covered balcony is now in its lee. I open the balcony door to let the cats out to play. After an initial cautious testing of this new environment, play they do, pouncing into the deep drifts and never waning hope of buried prey. The magic of the brief twilight passes, winter darkness descends, lights multiply. It's time for me to start dinner. My modeling career. Let us do this painful thing while the fit is on us, from Stephen Leacock's My Financial Career. My best friend Diane is a dainty 5'2". I'm an awkward 5'5" or 6" and still growing. Oh well, I console myself and inform Diane, fashion models are tall. No, they aren't, says Diane. They are small like me. How does she know? Because she speaks with the authority of an avid reader of movie magazines. In the privacy of my bedroom, I despair. How, if only my legs could be cut short. Is there surgery to remove a few inches of leg so I could be small and cute like Diane? Doesn't occur to me how grotesque I might look with short legs and a long back. Grade 9 home economics. We are sewing outfits for a school fashion show. I choose to make Bermuda shorts of tan chino and a tailored shirt of white cotton, a project somewhat beyond my skills. I visualize the outfit as it looks in the pattern book, but my workmanship can never be a match for the ideal of the catalog photo. Some rough bits can be hidden, like the crudely installed zipper, by a placket. As for the shirt collar and cuffs, the points and corners are not quite as sharp as the ideal. I will complete my outfit with white knee socks and my black and white saddle shoes, which I will be sure to clean and polish. Even so, faults and all, I am committed to the show. Of the other girls in my class, Kitty makes a straight skirt with a kick pleat she'll wear with a faux silk blouse. The twins, Fran and Lucy, craft contrasting poodle skirts to be topped with matching turtleneck pullovers. Nancy struggles with the intricacy of a pleated skirt to be worn with a twin set. And so it goes with the rest of the class. Some, like Kitty, are naturally skilled. Others need help from instructor Miss Holmes. For the show, we must learn how to walk the runway. Pretty Miss Holliman, the gym teacher, has a friend, a professional model, who has been invited to the school to give us the needed pointers. When the model arrives, my heart sinks with disappointment. She is petite. probably 5'2". Diane is right after all. Impeccably coiffed and made up, the model wears a dazzling red dress cinched at her tiny waist by a wide black belt. The skirt flared like a parachute by crinolines. Her ensemble is completed by a purse and stiletto heels to match the belt. Sighs of admiration ripple through the assembled 14-year-olds, tall and small. We learn to walk the runway. We learn how to move, how to turn, how to keep one arm bent, how to hold our gaze in the distance for good posture. We learn so many pointers, it's hard to remember them all. Never mind, adoring parents won't notice. We must write a description of our outfit for the fashion commentator, who will be Miss Holmes. Apart from the actual sewing, this is the hardest part. None of us has ever seen a real fashion show. What to say? I scribbled from the catalog with a few flourishes of my own. My mother wouldn't dream of forking out for a special visit to the hairdresser, so I must do my own hair, which means a night sleeping in rollers. Never mind, all is not lost. Mrs. Crawford will do makeup. A classroom has metamorphosed into our backstage dressing room with clothes racks, a row of mirrors, and little pots of makeup on a table. For the first time, I have eyeliner and mascara applied, and I'm so thrilled at how my appearance is transformed. Next, Mrs. Crawford chooses a pale red lipstick, and I can't resist running my tongue along the new waxy surface until I'm told to stop before I spoil the effect. Friday night in the school auditorium, still faintly redolent of the day's gym classes. A runway has been constructed and attached to the stage. It's only about 10 feet long, yet feels like a mile. Each girl is to emerge from the wings, walk to the center of the stage, make a complete turn, pause, then step onto the runway, walk to the end, pause, make a complete turn, then walk slowly back to the stage, another complete turn, then exit by the opposite wing. Keep smiling until you're out of sight. For the girls wearing high heels, and especially those with flare skirts, this will be the height of schoolgirl fashion. Then there will be me in shorts and saddle shoes. Why ever did I sign on? We line up in the wings in the order of appearance. I will follow the twins. I hear applause as they trip down the runway together, their poodle skirts swaying and twirling. Back on the stage, side by side, they make little curtsies, then depart right to delighted laughter and applause. It's my turn now. I walk out onto the stage to be half blinded by the lights. Gaze ahead, I remind myself, and smile. Keep smiling. I walk to center stage, pause. The auditorium is silent except for the voice of the commentator. Sue reminds us that the golfing season is almost upon us with her knee-length shorts of cotton chino. I turn as easily as saddle shoes as the others do in heels, then walk out onto the runway. Quiet audience murmurs reach my ear as I head among them. At the end of the runway, I pause, and ignoring the rule about gazing ahead, I can't resist a glance into the audience to search out my parents. There they are, third row back. The smiles, I hope, are proud. I lift my gaze and turn for the walk back to the stage, where I turn again and pause. I hear loud clapping, probably mom and dad. I make my exit to the wings. The relief is great. To my surprise, the welcome backstage from Mrs. Crawford, the twins, and the others who have undergone the ordeal is warm and congratulatory. I wasn't so bad after all. At home, I carefully place the shorts and the shirt on hangers in my closet, where they will remain untouched. The saddle shoes will return to duty as school shoes, worn till they wear out. As for the matter of small models, I informed Diane, I have just been a model and I am 5'6". The arrival of 5'10" Jean Shrimpton on the international fashion scene bears me out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. That was Susan Evans Shaw, reading from new unpublished work. Thank you very much. And to close our evening, we have Ben Robinson, who has for the last 2 years heroically been the MC and moderator of LitLive. And I personally thank him very much for taking over when Zoom and I proved to be perfectly incompatible. And I trust Ben will keep it going now that we're back in the real world. Anyway, Ben Robinson is a poet, musician, and librarian. His most recent publication is Without Form, a chapbook from The Blasted Tree and Knife Fork Book, which are two small press publishers. He has only ever lived in Hamilton on the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga nations. Please, a very warm welcome for Ben Robinson.
Thanks, Chris, for sparing me from introducing myself. I'm going to read from a project that I'm working on. It's about my name. I set a Google alert about my name about 3 or 4 years ago. If you don't know what that is, it's what people do when they are excessively vain and want to know what people are saying about them on the internet. But when you have a white bread name like Ben Robinson, they're not about you, the material that you get. So this project alternates between results on the left-hand page from the Google alerts, and then, you know, more personally, more individually specific memoir pieces as well. A message delivered by Benjamin Robinson at our Emeryville campus. Ben Robinson Drawbridge spoke with Mr. Kaway, who says the indefinite detention of refugees on the island has tarnished it in the eyes of the world. Archaeologist Ben Robinson, pictured, explores the story of the village from Norman times to the present day. The agreement negotiated with Queen Victoria's representative, William Benjamin Robinson, promised each First Nations citizen around $2 a person, with promises to increase the annuity as the land was developed and resources were used. Gary and Katie are close friends with Burton Albion owner Ben Robinson, which also sparked the Brewers' bet. By contrast, Ascaride resists the attentions of fisherman Benjamin Robinson, who has been in love with her since first seeing her on the stage in Marseille. Benjamin Robinson, as Ralph Rackstraw, also enjoyed a successful debut with Eugene Opera. Where our below deck stars Ben Robinson, Eddie Lucas, Kelly Johnson, and Amy Johnson now. The first time I met another person with my name was my first day of junior kindergarten. This other Ben and I would go all the way through elementary, middle, and high school together. We were Ben B and Ben R. It would not have been difficult to tell Ben B and me apart. My bright primary blue glasses, his size used to antagonize other kids. Although I don't remember the details, I have a memory of sitting on top of Ben B, punching down repeatedly into his torso, mad enough to fight, but too afraid to actually hit him in the face. Later, a third Ben, an identical twin, would come to our school. It is another great occasion to look forward to. The following Bolivar students were recently named to Rockhurst University's Fall 2018 Dean's List: Olivia Coons, Mary Harris, Benjamin Robinson. Second 9 weeks effort awards, 4th grade, Kyra Armstrong, Madeline Bach, Sloan Clausen, Braden Corona Pantoja, Ashley Hernandez, Haley Hughes, Jackson Jones, Riley Moore, Ben Robinson, Aiden Shanley, Cameron Terry. Stacy Southwell and Ben Robinson lost their daughter Sophie in 2016 after a battle with a brain tumor, and now 3 years on, they want to help other families going through the same thing. Benjamin Robinson, driving while impaired. In the early 1800s, Dr. Benjamin Robinson actually boarded patients at his own home, now the Belden Horn House, for treatment. Low hood wrestling scoreboard. Dual meet results for January 15th to 17th, 220 pounds. Ben Robinson, YK, pins Mark Caracola of Florida, 227. Ben Robinson III, Michael Barnett, Phil Malacote, and Jeff Reed were tapped by Fraley to serve on the Berea Planning and Zoning Commission. Ben Robinson knew he had something special. My parents didn't know it when they named me, but there are at least 2 other Benjamins in my family. My maternal grandfather's uncle was Benjamin Bootland. My grandfather tells me, my Uncle Ben was my mother's older brother. He had a gruff demeanor, but was very kind-hearted. He was good to my mother and always invited me and my oldest sister, Marilyn, to their family cottage at Peacock Point on Lake Erie. Ben probably didn't go to school, but he was a very successful businessman. He had a trucking business and owned several rental properties in the city. He and his wife, Lorraine, a kind and beautiful woman, had 4 children and owned a home on King Street West, just down from where the medical center is now. The second Benjamin was my paternal grandfather's grandfather, Benjamin Hodgins. Orleans will close out the conference by giving attendees advice on how they can apply all the information and knowledge they learned throughout the day. Perhaps if he stays here long-term, we get the best out of him. Ben Robinson can get there with him. Dr. Young told Ben Robinson Drawbridge requests were often delayed or denied by the bureaucrats to make the refugees suffer, and that depression and hopelessness had led to self-harm and suicide attempts becoming a daily occurrence. Ben Robinson added, the value proposition of the marketplace is to find the best complementary solutions and to pre-integrate them with our software. Ben Robinson has focused on his business on land for some time, so fans were hyped to see him in the photo. SRC Beats campus principal Ben Robinson said, this is a great opportunity for young female players in the Tees Valley area to enter a program with recognized pathways to the professional game whilst continuing their education in a dual career ethos. Director of Sales at Robinson's, Ben Robinson adds, we're continuing to drive Trooper as the beer of music, with a focus on craft beer bars, premium outlets, music venues, live events, and music festivals. The book of Genesis describes Benjamin as the second son of Rachel and the last of the 12 sons of Jacob. While giving birth, Rachel realizes she will not survive, and in the final moments before her passing, she tells the midwife her son is to be named Benoni, son of my mourning, or son of my sorrow. At some point after Rachel's passing, Jacob changes the child's name to Benjamin, meaning son of the right or son of the south, in reference to the region where Benjamin was born. The name can also be translated as son of my days, in reference to Jacob's old age at the time of the birth. The biblical translator, Robert Alter, writes, this is the sole instance of competing names assigned respectively by the mother and father. I can imagine Jacob would not have wanted his child's life defined by mourning and sorrow, but how long did he wait to change it? Did Benjamin know? Eichel Benjamin Robinson were the first same-sex couple to legally marry in the state, started the first Black gay pride celebration in Mississippi in 2004, and opened its first LGBT resource center. Their wedding photographer, Benjamin Robinson, a photographer of 15 years, played a major part in getting them into the competition. Paul said, Burton Albion Chairman Ben Robinson said, we have been delighted to work with our friends at Pirelli again, not only to provide extra parking on selected match days, but to also to raise funds for a charity that does incredible work fighting on behalf of brain tumor sufferers. Our school committee recognizes Benjamin Robinson from the Burncoat High School for his bravery saving 8 people from a house fire. The strategy worked as Finn was able to earn a 6-3 decision over Yorktown's Ben Robinson to become the Huskies' first Section 1 champion in more than a decade. Benjamin Robinson is known for his charming lyric tenor, emphatic characterizations, easy vocal production, and luscious instrument. Benjamin Robinson is a liar, manipulator, and cheater. He will lure you in and make you believe you are the only one. I promise you, you aren't. My family also has a name that is rarely spoken. In between my younger brother and I, my sister Emily was stillborn. Growing up, my only connections to Emily were a tiny aluminum angel given to me by my parents, a family outing each year on her birthday to tend the children's garden at the church, On the odd time, my dad would bring a box of photos down from a shelf in his closet. It has taken a child of my own to begin to understand that my mother was pregnant not twice, but 3 times. To consider how difficult it must be when someone asks how many children she has, what their names are. Ben Robinson has paid tribute to a great gentleman of football after England World Cup winning goalkeeper Gordon Banks died aged 81. The Barnards production of The Barber of Seville, directed by Nicholas Tocci with pianist Claire Black, features tenor Benjamin Robinson, Conte Almaviva, mezzo-soprano Rafaela Medina, Rosina, and bass baritone Tyler Bouquet, Fiorello and Officer. We've seen her lock lips with Ben Robinson, Adam Glick, and Conrad Empson, and maybe even Rossania, and we like her style. PRCA Jackson, miss, tie down roping average. First place, Blake Ash, 16.8 seconds on 2 heads of cattle, $3,174. Second place, Tyler Milligan, 17.4 seconds, $2,760. Third place, Ben Robinson, 18.5 seconds, $690. In a cupboard at my parents' house, there are 18 photo albums, one for the entirety of the decade between 1982 to 1992, then a new album every couple of years once my brother and I were born. My sister passed on April 30th, 1996. In the album spanning 95 to 97, the chronology is messy. The photos move from my 3rd birthday in December to Christmas, then back to Halloween, before jumping to my grandfather's birthday the next August. There is one photo from May of 96 in the album. It is a nondescript shot of me, alone, age 3, seated at a desk, smiling at my grandparents' house. It is the only photo present from the first 6 months of 1996. In our second blog, Director of Agency Services, Ben Robinson considers how agents could be identifying money laundering risk in their business. Those left to cherish his memories are his children, Michael Westmoreland and Samantha Ben Robinson of Jasper, Tennessee. Ben Robinson's back post header 12 minutes from time looked like it had rescued Newmarket a point, but they were punished for some slack defending in the first minute of stoppage time when Cameron Russell turned the ball home. Ben Robinson from Tunbridge Wells says he was suddenly made aware of the obstacles deaf people face when he met colleague Tom Frood. I didn't even realize I had done all that until I saw Ben's story, Whiteman said, referring to Ben Robinson's story about her on GoBucks.com. Review of the Kid, 1921, by Benjamin Robinson. My favorite scenes are garbage falling on Charlie, the pancake breakfast, the pugilism, and finally the angel wings. In our final blog, Director of Agency Services, Ben Robinson considers how to put together your risk assessment and what steps you can put in place to ensure you comply with the Money Laundering Regulations 2017. Chairman Ben Robinson said, after we managed to stay in the championship for a second season, we knew we would have to invest again in the first team squad to give us the best chance of punching above our weight and avoiding relegation. Soon after my son is born, I apply for his permanent health card and birth certificate. I fill out a form that includes the following. 1, the parents agree to this legal name. 2, number of live-born children to this parent, including this birth, A. 3, number of stillborn, not alive, children born to this parent, B. 4, total number of children born to this parent, A plus B. A few weeks later, the documents arrive in the mail addressed to my son. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Ben. Excellent reading and what is in the name, a great deal of very interesting research and contrast, especially. That wraps up our show for this evening. I just have a couple of closing comments. One is that our next Lit Live will be on Thursday, April 7th at 7 p.m. here at the Art Gallery of Hamilton. In April, we will be resurrecting our very modest cover charge for the in-person part of our show, that being $10 cash at the door and $5 for AGH members and students. We will continue to broadcast on Zoom for free for the foreseeable future. Of course, it's a fluid situation, so we will let you know if any of that changes. And next month, April 7th, we have Concetta Princip, Michelle Berry, Anne Shin, Greg Santos, and AF Moritz and Jennifer Jones reading for us on April the 7th. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It's been a wonderful pleasure to meet you all and to be with all of you tonight. Thank you, and we'll see you next month.